Welcome, everyone, to this virtual candidates forum presented by the League of Women Voters of Lee County and the Alliance for the Arts. I'm Sarah McDonald, president of the League here in Lee County. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization working to build citizen participation in the democratic process. The League never supports or opposes candidates for office or political parties. And a special shout out to Bill Taylor from the Alliance for the Arts for his invaluable assistance in producing these events. I hope you find this virtual forum useful in your decisions about the upcoming elections. Remember, democracy is not a spectator sport.
Welcome. My name is Clara Ann Graham, Director of Voter Services for the League of Women Voters of Lee County. With the efforts of the Voter Service Committee members, we bring educational voting information to empower you, the voter. Remember, voting is people power. Voting initiatives include Vote 411, a voter's guide. Type in your browser, VOTE 411, and input your address. Voting information specific to you will appear. Another initiative is an election protection hotline for voters having problems voting. Election protection phone number is posted on the Vote 411 site. Lee County Supervisor of Elections website also has voting educational information. This candidates forum is hosted by the League of Women Voters of Lee County in partnership with the Alliance for the Arts. Consistent with federal laws and league policy, no forum will be held with less than 2 candidates for each race. No personal attacks or abusive language will be permitted. No substitutions or stand-ins for candidates are allowed. For fairness, time limits will be strictly enforced. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for their introductory presentation and 2 minutes for the wrap-up, with the first speaker selected at random. Questions have been solicited from League members and the public. Each candidate will be allowed 1 minute to answer each question. The League will rotate starting speakers for each question. By participating in the forum, candidates consent to the recording of the forum and to its release by the League and its affiliates and its representatives. Forum content is the property of the League of Women Voters and no recording of the forum by the candidate or the staff is allowed. Rebroadcast of the forum must be done in its entirety. Candidates must agree that they will not use any portion of the forum in a political advertisement. This virtual forum will be posted online and accessible 24/7 by the League of Women Voters of Lee County and the Alliance for the Arts. Remember, every vote counts. Happy learning.
Hello, my name is Mary Beth Gentleman, and I am a member of the League of Women Voters of Lee County, and I'll be serving as your moderator today for this forum. As a reminder to our audience, all of the qualified candidates were invited to participate in this forum for Bonita Springs District 3. 2 candidates were unable to participate or did not respond. But we have with us today Ron George and Ruth Condit as candidates for Bonita Springs District 3. So we'll start with opening statements, and each candidate will have an opportunity to give us their opening statement for 2 minutes. So Ron, can we ask that you start?
Thanks, Mary Beth. So I am Ron George. I'm a candidate for Bonita Springs District 3 City Council. I have my education is I have a BS in chemistry and math, and then I have a PhD in chemistry. I've been married for 40 plus years. I have a wife, Ann, who is a retired teacher. I have a son, Christopher, who is a staff nurse in a hospital in Salt Lake City. And I have a daughter, Caitlin, who is at the age of 18 left home to go play soccer for the Naval Academy and hasn't returned home since. So she's currently a lieutenant commander in the Navy, and she's somewhere out in probably South China Sea right now on the head of engineering on a destroyer. So that's sort of my family. Personal background: I retired about 2 years ago, and I was a senior director at Lockman Consultants. I've worked over 40 years in the pharmaceutical industry and held various scientific and management positions. I have a lot of business experience and experience working with numerous government agencies and very complex projects. I live at Seascape Condominiums in Bonita Springs, where I'm currently the board president, and I was also appointed to the City of Bonita Springs Technology Advisory Board. I'm a member of the Calusa Waterkeepers, Bonita Beach Association, Hickory Island Condominium Association, St. Louis Church. My purpose for running is to use my energy to help my community. I have no personal business or financial interest in the City of Bonita Springs. I'm self-financing my campaign, and I'm running out of time, but I will try to stress my goals as we go through the forum.
Okay. Good morning, or good afternoon, rather, Bonita neighbors. There's a story of why I run, one which I'm often asked. One sunny afternoon last year, I was driving down Bonita Beach Road, muttering to myself about the graveyard, the huge high billboard, and the dead palm tree trunks lining a busy, prominent intersection. I wondered what kind of municipal blindness presents this kind of public image year after year to tourists and residents. At city meetings, I watch good business and development ideas tabled for study only to quietly die. I have watched new mixed-use retail shops lining Old 41's historic district sidewalk stand puzzlingly vacant. I have witnessed residents' wishes not listened to. As your city council representative and a neighbor like you, I will put my communication, organization, and collaboration skills to work on these issues. What's more, I will address water quality and quantity, permitting inefficiencies, and congestion. And more importantly, you'll be heard. You'll be treated with courtesy and respect, and your wishes will be respected. A bit about me. I lived in Pensacola, Florida, where my father, a career military officer in the United States Navy, was stationed. I returned to Florida in 2003 with my husband and two college-aged sons. I have worked in television and print advertising in marketing for a small Wall Street brokerage firm and in marketing for a tech startup. In 1991, I started my own residential design business with projects completed on time and on budget in New York City, Pennsylvania, and Southwest Florida. I am endorsed by the Hispanic Vote of Southwest Florida. I currently serve on the city's advisory board on historic preservation. I am a member of the AM Rotary Club, the Everglades Wonder Garden, Friends of Lovers Key, the Downtown Business Alliance, and Bonita Springs Historical Society. Hire me on November 8th to put my skills and abilities to work for you, for a Bonita that keeps the small town charm in its big, bright future.
Thank you. And joining us now is Stephen Blumrosen, and we'll ask him for his opening statement.
Good morning. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I've supplied the League of Women Voters answers to the questions that they posted to us for their website. And so for more information about me, that would be a really good source to turn to, the League of Women Voters. I have a mascot with me. I'm not really used to this TV system. Usually I'm on Zoom. But this is much much more detailed and refined picture. Appreciate it. My mascot is with me because of Alex Jones. Alex Jones was in the news, and still is, because he's been ordered to pay millions and millions and millions of dollars to the victims, the parents, the families that are left because their children were murdered at Sandy Hook. He lied about that, and he could have handled the situation differently. Early on, the school discovered that the kids were delighted when rubber ducks suddenly appeared in their school. People started sending rubber ducks from around the world, and it made the children feel better. The parents decided that rubber ducks should follow Alex Jones around, and the rubber ducks ended up all over his car one day. He could have said, ha, okay, the joke's on me. Let's sit down and talk. But he didn't. He pursued his defamation, and things escalated to the point where it's really, really terrible that people can't talk to each other. I'm running to encourage people to talk to each other. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those opening statements. And so now let's turn to some questions. The first question is about density reduction groundwater resource areas. And the question is, how important do you think it is to consider the density reduction groundwater resource area when making land use decisions? So let me go in reverse order here. Stephen, would you respond, please?
Thank you. Yes, I value this opportunity to say it's crucial.
All right. Ruth.
Well, yes, I think it's very, very important, and we have standards on the books, and I think that we should absolutely follow them when it comes to developmental questions and land use questions, and we should stick to it.
All right, and Ron.
So this is close to my heart because if you understand the way this works, very often a developer will approach the city, they'll want to put in housing or a development, et cetera. And what happens is obviously for financial reasons, they want to have as high a density as they're allowed. And what I've seen is this can get handled in several ways. The city can just flatly deny it if it doesn't meet the current codes, et cetera, for density. And I've seen them do that with a development on the other side of 75 that's actually in a lawsuit right now because the city denied it. But I've also seen where the city has allowed it, and according to the city codes, if they do exceed the density allowment, they're allowed to contribute as sort of a penalty to the affordable housing fund that the city has. So I think it really has to be carefully managed. I really am concerned about stormwater and the density, both on stormwater and on traffic. So I just don't think the city's really handling it perfectly right now, put it that way.
Thank you. Let's move to another development question. We actually have quite a number of development questions for reasons that I think the three of you can understand. What are your thoughts on urban redevelopment as contrasted with new development? What role should the city play, if any, in prohibiting, encouraging, discouraging urban redevelopment versus new development?
Well, they're doing that now. I've read that some of the malls are being repurposed for affordable housing. I think it's a great idea. I think it's terrible to just leave our existing structures or urban areas and keep expanding outwards with new development and leaving the older spaces just lying fallow. So I'm all for repurposing or redeveloping our older existing neighborhoods. It's a wonderful idea. It can be done quite easily, and also you can combine the older buildings or businesses with modern new development, and they exist very well. And there's many areas in the United States where that has been done beautifully. I think the district under the Manhattan Bridge, Dumbo, on Water Street is a perfect example in Brooklyn, New York, of the redevelopment in an existing urban area, and it works great.
Okay, thank you. I happen to know Dumbo very well, and it's pretty remarkable how individuals can come together and turn those older buildings into very useful places to live and establish new businesses. In effect, that's very similar to Bonita Springs because we're a wonderful little community with very little room to expand, except the Everglades. And the other Everglades have other uses. We should live in harmony with nature, not send our bulldozers in to destroy it. So infill or urban redevelopment is, to me, probably preferred by the community who are not developers. I gather that it's much less costly to bulldoze what's there and just build new. But history has value. One of the things I am is an historian, and history has value. We should not throw away our history to accommodate new housing.
Thank you. And Ron?
Yes, I'd like to speak specifically to Bonita Springs. And if you all are familiar with the downtown area, we have a lot of areas downtown that are vacant that could be used for housing. We have areas downtown that the housing is not very desirable. And so we do have a problem in the city, and that we really want the city to shine as a whole. And we need to work with the vacant areas that can be developed or at least built on in providing housing. And we also have to understand we have the other existing housing that very often ends up being low income housing. And so we got to be careful when we decide we're trying to fix up and develop the areas that we don't price out our current residents out of their current housing. So that's one of my concerns.
Thank you. All right. The next question is regarding planning for natural disasters. What are your plans to protect critical infrastructure in preparation for the next disaster? This is a critical infrastructure planning and protection question. Have you given thought to what the city should be doing by way of planning, for the next natural disaster? Let me start with Stephen on this.
Okay. Well, Ron mentioned that he was on a committee about communications, and after the last major hurricane knocked out communications, ham radio operators were about the only ones who could keep people in touch with each other. There has to be a lot better way of running a city than that. We're as a city, we're in constant negotiations with cell phone providers. Why don't we just vote, which is about all any of us will be able to do, for a policy that city vendors have to provide full production of plans to accommodate situations like that.
All right, thank you. Ruth?
Well, I think the city has in place already evacuation plans. I'm a little concerned about the enormous congestion. We have, one route to 75, and that's Bonita Beach Road if you wish to, leave the area. And I don't know what the help is for the congestion that will be on the roads for that.
All right, thank you. And Ron?
Yeah, so Ruth is right. The city, I believe, is doing a very good job. It is their top priority right now. The strategic priority is improved stormwater management. On top of that, the city also has a command center in place now with the new city hall that's all set up for the next disaster of this type. And then lastly, the city is working. They did get an $18 million grant, right, from the state just not too long ago to help improve on stormwater management. So I think the city has it as a top priority, and I in that case, they're headed in the right direction.
Thank you. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about transportation. Can you speak to what your priorities would be? Assume you're elected. What would you specifically want to see happen vis-a-vis transportation in and around Bonita Springs? Let me ask Ruth to start with this one.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you did. I was hoping that you would. I looked into the what's it called? The little bus they have. It's the Uber bus where you can call up and it will come to your door, pick you up, and along the way perhaps pick up other residents to go to whatever destination they have. And I think that works very well. As a matter of fact, I tried to board one, and here's where I found a little bit of a flaw. Many of our senior citizens are using this form of busing or transportation. And if like many seniors, they're not technologically proficient, they might have a little trouble, because in order to order it, you have to download an app. And I didn't want to, I was hoping I could just hop on and take a ride. Well, you can't do that. And I didn't feel like fiddling with getting an app. I was there with the bus driver. And so I tried making a phone call, because he said, oh, you can just call. Well, you can't, and especially on weekends. So I like the idea of that. I'm blocking on the name of the bus, of this little Uber bus or Lyft bus. But I think some of the problems with it could be smoothed out. And one is ease of ordering up maybe make it easy with a telephone, or your cell phone, to order up a ride. You don't want to do an app.
Thank you. And Ron, what are your thoughts on transportation? What would you do as a priority?
So there's a couple things. I mean, transportation is very, very broad topic, but I'm going to focus on public transportation. And Ruth is right. The city they're really the first area being tested with the bus, which is called Ultra.
Thank you.
And the Ultra does work through the Uber app, and it works quite well. Unfortunately, the restriction is in hours and route. So I actually, one of the other ladies who lives in my building, I've helped her start using Uber and Ultra. And it's not that difficult once you've got the apps down. But my biggest concern about Ultra is just the limitations on hours and routes. So that's one thing the city either needs to expand that, or they need to go back to having a more bus access for the public transit.
Thank you. And Stephen.
Transportation is the #1 issue that people talk to me about since I've qualified as a candidate. I would often say, well, what do you think needs to be improved about Bonita Springs? And transportation was the #1 issue. I think on the most part, they mean traffic, especially during half of the year when there are more people here. I'm not a traffic engineer, but I'm sure the city knows some. And so I would encourage the city to present us with some plans that we can vote on policy about concerning improvement or easing the flow of traffic, both in the summer and in the winter. Another thing that people talk to me about are dump trucks. Apparently, dump trucks are allowed to go through residential neighborhoods, and the residents don't like it. And they say that they're nearby major thoroughfares that could more easily accommodate dump trucks. So that's another major issue. And I'll see what people tell me they need. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Next, I want to ask you about how much weight do you give land use changing processes in the Lee plan? And Ron, I'll start with you.
Okay, well, one of the reasons I'm running for city council is because I've been to enough council meetings and I've seen the process that usually takes place, and it ends up being pretty much a negotiation between a developer and the city. And very often what really disturbs me is when the city, because of incentives to the city, such as impact fees and high density fees and potential for taxes and etc., they're very often very loose with providing variances to the codes, etc. And so one of my campaign promises is that if I get elected, I'm going to really scrutinize any kind of code variances that the city permits.
All right, thank you. And Ruth?
Well, I absolutely agree with Ron. I too have watched many a city council meeting, 3 years worth of them, 2 years on video, and there is too much agreement with variances. We have ordinances on the book, we have regulations on the book, and it's as if they don't exist. If I'm elected, I would study these very carefully and the situation very carefully before I readily agree to any of these variances. They're on the books for a reason. People want them. Okay, they want height restrictions. They don't want to be in Miami, so or have a Miami 5 look. So I think that if we're going to keep the small town charm, not that I'm against development in our future, we have to adhere to our land codes or regulations. If we don't want to, then we should change them. But at the moment, we should stick by the books.
All right, thank you. And Stephen?
We should change city policies to provide for more involvement of the citizenry. I mean, we're here to represent the voters of our district, but we're a city and we have to work together. And the city works within the county, and the county works within the state, and the state so far is working within the United States. And there are a lot of policies and procedures to follow in order for that all to work together. And one of the things that a lot of places I've had experience with, and I have to bow to Ruth and to Ron for their longevity in listening to city council meetings. But many places have a lot more opportunity for public input into the planning process. And there's a lot more community engagement and a lot more community acceptance when that happens.
All right. Next, I'd like to ask you each to explain where you stand on Conservation 2020 program and conservation easements. And Ruth, I'm going to start with you first, if I may.
Yes, well, I'm all for conservation 2020. The more, the better. I see it continuing. I'd like to see it expand. I'm very worried about what we're going to be handing over to our children and grandchildren. We have extreme pressures of development. Not that I'm against development; it cannot be halted. And of course, in many ways, it's very good. But the pressure is unbelievable, especially on our environmentally sensitive lands, and they're being encroached on more and more. Many of these $1 million homes are not being built on highways; they're being built next to preserves and sensitive lands because they're pretty to look at and nice to be next to. So I'm all for buying up as much land as we possibly can and keeping conservation 2020 going for as long as possible.
All right. And Stephen?
There's a movement afoot. There's a petition going around. There are a lot of people who want to give nature the rights that corporations have. They're not human, but they have that in common. And if corporations can use the courts to provide what they need, there should be people who can speak for Mother Earth. As a lawyer, I'm not sure that's necessarily the way things have been done. It might be a way for the future. The way things have been done is that humans, other than with a few exceptions, like those who can't represent themselves, go and voice their concerns to city councils and other jurisdictions. Laws are passed and courts are enforcing them because of the effect they have on humans. And humans now have the right to protect nature.
All right. Thank you. And Ron?
Well, first of all, I'm an outdoors man, so I love nature. But beyond that, the state's 2020 plan is, when I first heard about it, I was really impressed because, this is a collaboration between landowners who get to keep their land, but make a promise to the state that it's not going to be used in the future or sold in the future for development. And that's a great way to ensure, I believe, the state's natural beauty and, all of the aspects of the native way Florida is intended to be. So I'm all in favor of that plan. Obviously, I'm also in favor of other plans that help protect the waterways and the land from overdevelopment, et cetera. So, but 2020, it's just unbelievable. I think that's the best thing the state has come up with.
All right. In terms of enjoying nature, my next question goes to, do you think that the public has adequate access to beaches and boat parking and boat ramps relative to the size of the population? Do you think we are right-sized in terms of beach access and boating access, or is more needed? And I'll start with Stephen.
Oh, thank you. This is a perfect example of the need for public input. I live near the beach. It's not a problem for me. I see lots of people using the public parking areas, and very frequently, there's no parking left because there's just a few spaces there. If I was living somewhere else in Bonita Springs and I wanted to go to the beach, I would want to use one of those spots if I could. And if we can figure out how to have more of them, that would be a really good idea, even if it is in my front yard.
All right. Ron?
Well, I live on the beach, if that helps. But anyways, my concern is that Bonita Springs is 40 square miles, and we only have 2.5 miles of Bonita Beach that is here. We have 10 accesses. The city has no involvement with the beach whatsoever. They do not own any of the beach. They do not own any parking on the beach. They only own one small lot, which is near my condo across the street. And the city basically, as a city, pretty much ignores the beach. And I feel next to the people of Bonita Springs, the beach is the most valuable asset that Bonita Springs has. But unfortunately, the city doesn't treat it that way. And if I get on city council, that's going to be one of my top priorities, to ensure that the city starts taking more ownership in the beach and the waterways around the beach.
And Ruth, your comments.
Well, I don't know how you get any more access. There isn't enough access. And I live about a 5-minute drive away from the beach. I'd like to use it more often. Of course, everybody that lives here has a system. I've got a system for getting a parking space. It is difficult. But I don't want to see any more, because if you get more, you're going to have more people on a very thin strip of beach, and it's going to be overly crowded and very unpleasant. Not everybody, you just can't do it. I mean, you only have so much beach, you only have so much square footage, square miles, and I just don't know where you could pack in more people. I think it's adequate as for what we have. It's what you can do, to be realistic.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask you about how you approach staying up to date with the constituents in Bonita Beach. How you stay up to date, knowing what people are thinking, what they're concerned about, and moreover, how you stay up to date with trends in municipal planning, municipal government, that sort of thing. Can you speak to what are the sources of ongoing education for you that allows you to make informed decisions for the community? And Ron, I'd like to start with you.
Sure. Well, first of all, the way I stay current with what the city is doing is I obviously attend all of the city council meetings. I don't know if I've missed one in the last 2 years. So at least I'm current on what the city is thinking and planning, etc. And then the other thing I do as far as getting the people's input is I go out on the beach and I talk to people every day, both in the morning and the night. So I hear what people are thinking. And as part of the campaigning, I obviously went and gathered petitions. And I think we were required to get like 56 or something to be qualified. And I went out and got over 100. And I think Ruth and I are the only candidates running that actually went through that process of getting petitions from the various residents of District 3. So that's the way I like to get straight from the residents.
And Ruth, can we get your comments?
You're right up my alley, because I'm a big yacker, as anybody knows. I love to talk to people. I'll talk to a lamppost. I've knocked on over 2,000 doors, and I'm going to start all over again in October. And I've walked through trailer parks. I've walked down dusty country roads that are unpaved. I've walked up and down on Hickory Boulevard at the Potter Mansions. Walked all over, talked to everybody, and I love it. And that's how I keep up. I ask people what they want, what they're interested in, what they like about Bonita, what they don't like about Bonita. And believe me, I've heard an earful. People have invited me into their homes and told me some of the problems they've had with the city. In addition, I belong to a number of local organizations that I will tell you about in my closing statements. I'm also a lifelong learner. I read, I watch. The city's website itself has wonderful forums, videotaped on city planning. And so you can go right onto YouTube and get educated. All kinds of wonderful websites. I read all day, every day when I'm not talking to people and door knocking.
Thank you. And Stephen.
Like the two other candidates who bothered to appear here today, I watch all the city council meetings on the computer, if I'm not there in person. I use Facebook a lot. There's some terrific Facebook groups that are specifically about Bonita Springs. There's one where you can say anything, and people sometimes do. There's a particular non-Facebook way of keeping in touch with neighbors on the internet. I read the Banner and the Florida Weekly and the business handout, uh, and talk to people. I know everybody said that, but that's a really good way of getting firsthand information about what concerns people. And I talk to the city. If I have a question about how something works, I'm relatively new here, although my family's been here since 2002, and the people who work for the city are very forthcoming.
All right, thank you very much. Here's a very concrete question for all of you. What are your plans for any unspent campaign funds? And let me start with Ruth on this one.
Well, Mary Beth, there isn't going to be anything left. I'm going to be spending every last penny. And what will be left, I intend to give to Hope Hospice, who was so wonderful to my husband in his last days.
All right, thank you. And let's go to Stephen.
I don't plan on having any left.
All right. Ron?
So as I mentioned earlier, I'll make this simple. I'm self-financing. So I will spend, or I will finance what I need to spend. So there won't be any left because, like I said, I'm self-financing. I've rejected number of people who've wanted to contribute. I just don't want to be owing to any of my supporters. I support them whether they give me money or not. So I've decided early on my decision to run that I was going to be self-financing.
All right. Here's our last question for our session. And it is, what are the top 3 issues that you think need to be coordinated with other governmental jurisdictions? Some of you mentioned earlier that, obviously the city is, within a county, within a state, and so forth. If you were on the city council, what issues do you think you would try to increase coordination or initiate coordination about with other levels of government? So let me start with Stephen.
The 3 issues that people have told me are their biggest concerns are transportation, streamlining the permitting process for new businesses, and affordable housing. We can't do very much on our own. We can't even provide the services many cities do because we're government light. So we have to work with other jurisdictions just to provide adequate policing of our city, adequate fire protection, adequate ambulances. And when I was taking care of my dad 24/7 for several years here in our apartment, ambulances, the fire and the ambulance people were terrific, and I don't know what we would have done without them. And so I'm thinking that the way the city works with other jurisdictions, if that's reflective of that process, is very good.
All right, thank you. And Ron, I'm going to ask you to go next.
Sure. So this is also one of my biggest concerns about the way the city's run. So the biggest problems I see are things like congestion on the roads, issues on the beach, and with our waterways. I'll talk about congestion. So we have Bonita Beach Road, we've got Little Hickory Road, and then we got 41. The city doesn't own the Little Hickory or the Hickory Boulevard. They don't own Bonita Beach Road. They don't own 41. And so the city needs to work better with the county and the state to provide a good improvements to the traffic flow, especially during the season. I tried to work a little bit with the county, which is in charge of Bonita Beach Road, and especially around the dock, the area called Docks, where Bonita Beach meets Little Hickory Road. And it's a bureaucracy that it's going to take a lot of clout to break in and get things handled better in that respect. Similarly, on the beach, I mentioned that the beach the city doesn't own the beach. The beach is owned by the state. The county owns the accesses. It's just not organized well at all. Everybody points the fingers in different directions. And
All right.
waterways. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Thank you. And Ruth.
Well, I absolutely agree with Ron. Everybody points their finger at the other guy, but that's an excuse, not a reason not to do anything. As you know, my big bugaboo, well, I have several, there's several important issues, but one of them is the community aesthetics of that pathetic Bonita Beach Road. It's not fit to be called the gateway to the Gulf, leading to the beautiful Hickory Island. I mean, what a shabby entrance. And in order to improve it, you're going to have to work and collaborate very, very closely with the county. And I intend to do that and to follow through, and with the city as well. There's only things that we as a city can do and improve the areas along Bonita Beach Road that we do own and that we do have a say-so over, okay? So we're going to do that. As far as water quality, the same thing, cooperate with the South Water Florida Management District and whatever other relevant agencies we have. I too am for streamlining permitting for smaller businesses and ventures that want to start out and make it easier for them and less burdensome. And for that, of course, we would work very closely with City Council to see if we can overcome some of the inefficiencies that are existing on the books today.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move to closing statements now. And what we'll do, it's a 2-minute closing statement for each of you. And we will go in reverse order of the opening statements. So for our first closing, Stephen, would you start, please?
Well, thank you. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity. And I'd like to thank the Alliance for the Arts for putting this little timer up in the corner of our screen so we know when to stop talking. Basically, I'm not asking you for money. I like being unbought and unbossed. I want to work for the people of Bonita Springs. I'm here to ask for your vote. I'm Stephen Blumrosen, BLUMROSEN. Just call me Stephen. You see me on the beach, you see me in a restaurant, say hi, call me Stephen. The mascot and I are here to ask you for your vote for Stephen Blumrosen for City Council, District 3.
Thank you. All right, Ruth.
Yes. Well, Bonita has a wonderful vision for Old 41 and Bonita Beach Road. They do. They have a vision on the books. And the downtown has a great start, bookended by the Shangri-La Inn and the Wonder Gardens, and unique small businesses and restaurants that are in between and will be in between. And as a council member and your neighbor representing the entire city, I would study the comprehensive plan, the current land development code, zoning codes, and a code enforcement process to improve the procedures and attitudes that would make our city business friendlier. I would pursue there are some quick fixes we could do for Bonita Beach Road, which would include, again, partnering with Lee County to develop a master plan for median landscapes with native plants that are easy to maintain and inexpensive to purchase. And with affordable, yes, a low maintenance native planting. And you can check with Naples, Immokalee Road towards Golden Gate is a stunning example of how our medians on Bonita Beach Road could look. As for traffic, unless you halt development, you're not going to halt congestion. Very little can be done about it. However, it can be calmed, and the city has already made some wonderful starts with plans for accessory roads and that bypass some of the congestion at the lights. Naples is exploring some new developments with intersections, diamond-shaped intersections, would sound very interesting, and we could explore that as well. And as far as one thing I would like to do is for the stormwater retention ponds, to prevent some of the fertilizer and nutrients getting into our waterways and polluting them, that we start an education program for HOAs on perhaps planting filter marshes around their retention ponds rather than treating them with chemicals. The chemicals go right into the water and they go right into the Gulf or the Imperial River. So those are some of the things that I would like to do. Vote for me on November 8th, and your bright future can start now.
Thank you. And Ron.
Sure. I also would like to thank the League of Women's Voters for putting on this forum. I really want to use my energy to help my community. And this is why I'm running. And I think I have all of the background with my technical background and my business background and my ability to interact with all the agencies, the federal type of agencies I've worked with. Again, my goal as a candidate is to ensure and enhance the quality of life for the residents of Bonita Springs. And being out there and knocking on doors, the quality of life in Bonita Springs covers the whole spectrum. And I'd like to ensure everybody's quality of life is acceptable. My strengths, I believe, are my willingness to listen and my desire to help others. I get real joy when I can put a smile on somebody's face because I've helped them through a problem or a situation. I hope to work on mitigating our congestion, both around the beach and the environmental improvements, public safety, and the security or scrutiny of zoning variances. Again, Bonita Beach is only 2.5 miles of beach, and it's the second most valuable thing that the city has beyond their actual residents. And I really want to see the city at least spending a little more effort on the beach and the beach areas. I really want to help guide them in their downtown future and the development of downtown and trying to ensure we keep the charm of the city. So I'd be real honored for the residents if they were to vote me in as the city council representative for District 3. And again, I also want to keep Bonita Springs' small town charm. So I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all for participating. We really appreciate your time and effort to help educate voters on your positions and your views and your goals. Much appreciated. The League would also like to thank the Alliance for the Arts for producing and recording this forum. The recording will be posted on YouTube, and links to the recording will be available on League of Women Voters website, which is lwvlee.org. It'll also be available on the vote411.org website and on the website for the Alliance for the Arts, which is artinlee.org. Candidates can share the link to the entire recording, but may not share just parts of the recording. I'd like to remind everyone to check the League's voter guide on vote411.org. All qualified candidates were asked to respond to questions there that are different from those that we use for today's forum. You can see their responses there. Again, on behalf of the Lee County chapter of the League of Women Voters, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.